Eli, Nate, Jab, consensus top 30 here. Thomas White, Connor Norby, Noble Meyer. First off, are you in all in agreement that Thomas White is the best prospect in this Marlins organization?
100%. 100%.
That was one of the only choices. So we already got this question from Parrish about which were the most controversial picks. And the answer to that is like all of them are controversial except for Thomas at the top. Thomas has been really awesome from start to finish this season while moving up to high A. Really the only hiccup in his season was going to the Futures game. He did not pitch well. His control was way off during that Futures game appearance. And aside from that, in terms of games that were actually in the regular season, it's a low 3s ERA, it's a low 3s FIP, and it's 3 pitches that are all really interesting, from his fastball to his improved changeup to his breaking ball. That it looks like a really impressive future starting pitcher in the not too distant future, like not without the realm of possibility that he maybe finishes his season at Double-A. He kind of singled that out as a goal of his, and there's still a month and a half left in the Double-A season, so maybe he even makes that leap at the very end of the year. He's been healthy. He's been good. I'm somebody that I actually like to lean towards position players over pitchers when it's close, understanding that all these pitchers are going to break, unfortunately, at some point, and they're just not used as heavily. They're not quite as instrumental in changing your franchise, but to me, he's just the one guy on this list that has the fewest blemishes overall. That's turning out really well. And it's a reminder that even though, I mean, we still like Noble and still has a ton of projection and ability, and he's right there with Thomas at high A right now, it's not always about the order of the draft picks that you make. This might be part of last handful of Marlins draft classes where the best guy in their class isn't necessarily the first one that comes off the board right there. It's about just making sure that you get value from several different guys. And it's important that the first rounder works out, but it's not essential. And Thomas White was a first round talent that fell to them just outside the first round, and that has really looked good. And so that's really one of the only guys near the top that was drafted and developed by this organization so far. Otherwise, 6 of our top 9 are ones that were very recently acquired.
Yeah, and I want to go ahead. 4 of these names were recently drafted or were drafted in the 2024 draft with Carter Johnson, Morlando, Aiden May, and Grant Shepardson. Jab, those 4 names, what do you think of maybe their placement there in the top 30? And also, how have you found out maybe how they've played so far in affiliated ball, specifically with Morlando and Johnson?
Yeah, I think, and the funniest thing too is I want to go back to what Eli said, where it's kind of funny where it seems like 2 years in a row, the Marlins' second overall pick for the organization is the one that was the most universally liked amongst the fan base, where Thomas White somehow fell to the 50th overall, and same with Carter Johnson, who were 2 guys that I thought were going to be gone before the Marlins could even think about picking them. So, but I think they've shown, even though PJ, it was 1 game, the first pitch foul ball that I thought he hit on the highway out there in Clearwater, that was cool to see. But I think Carter Johnson, the most impressive thing with him his first game was, and like I talked about with Stowers, where these guys that kind of get put into these really bright lights, how quick can you slow the game down? And that was pretty apparent with Johnson, where even his first AB, he kind of probably first time seeing some higher velo, coming out of the Alabama high school season. And it was kind of like right after that first AB, they were right in a competitive at bat. So I think that was good to see out of him. Would have liked to see Morlando play when they continued that game. I don't know what exactly happened with that, but yeah, I think across the board, the more I kind of think about it and look back on it, I'm really happy with the guys they picked, especially being able to sign Shepardson. That's a guy that I really like, 5 to 6 in high school, super easy, kind of leans towards cutting it, which is really good. So that's another dude that I can't wait to see them roll out next year.
Yeah. Eli, you mentioned some controversies. I think one here, I don't know if it's too much of a controversy just because how he's been playing, especially since getting drafted, and that is Mr. Jacob Berry not making the top 30 in your list, former first-round pick, to go from future of the franchise to being below guys like Graham Pauley and Jun-Seok Shim and maybe guys who have yet to really prove themselves or at all in the Marlins. And what has just been the matter with Jacob Berry? Is he an honorable mention, or is he so far down below the prospect list?
So the first thing that why this is a fun exercise is because there are guys that I like that are not in this top 30 that can still be useful big leaguers and in the not too distant future that are not on this list. Now, to be frank on Berry, he's not particularly close at this moment. He had that stretch not that long ago, I guess June and most of July, where he was hitting at a very high level, a lot of line drive, singles and doubles at AA. He's improving, but I mean, the larger sample kind of just speaks for itself. It's a career 656 OPS in the minor leagues now through 230 games for a guy that doesn't have a position. And like, he's one of the only guys on here that I just list straight up as a DH moving forward. I have no idea what position he's going to play and provide anything close to average value. So he needs to rake, and the power just isn't there. It's 6 home runs this year. It was only 9 home runs last year. It's less. He's just not quite sneaking the ball over the wall as much as he did in college. The plate discipline has been a lot worse than they thought it was. So there are other guys that I think just have a higher likelihood of being decent big leaguers. Of the guys that are just outside the top 30, there's somebody like Nigel Belgrave, who from last year's draft class, he's already up to AA. Amazing slider, dominating right-handed batters. It's going to be a reliever only, but he's somebody that's going to be at big league spring training next year. And I think he's going to get called up within the next year. And that's a guy that I couldn't quite find room for on this list. There are, if you go to the really lower levels of this organization too, like there's Kaner Benitez, this left-hander in low A Jupiter, who you can make a strong case should be on here, who already has a very impressive changeup to go along with good control so far that he's showing. They have a handful of those young pitchers that are coming along well, either in rookie ball or in low A, that you can make the case for right now, in addition to who's on here. It's just, they added so much depth at this organization. At the top ends, I still have reservations about basically everybody aside from Thomas White. That is still one area that distinguishes this between what it is now and between being a great farm system. Is it's still a little lacking in high ceiling talent that you can realistically see as all-stars in the future, but it's a lot of quality depth. And it helps when those guys are close to the big leagues too. That's why, especially the top 10 of this list, all those guys, with Carter Johnson's the one guy that we put in there, even with like 1 game of pro experience or 2 games of pro experience. But with everybody else, those are guys that are the proximity to the majors is a lot closer, and it's easy to see that translation. So it's really every level of the organization has buffed up a little bit between the drafts and between the trades that they've made. And there's no room for Berry. And I'd say that compared to other outlets, we're not as beholden to somebody's draft position or how much money they got right off the bat. Another guy that's not on here is Yidi Cape, who was the equivalent of a first-round draft pick a few years ago in international free agency. And his approach at the plate just isn't what it should be. He hasn't grown into his body the way we thought he would. It's not sticking defensively, not translating to as much defensive value as we thought. And he's also been out with an injury. So that's somebody that still has a potential. I think he's still 21 years old, and he'll probably get back to playing in minor league games next week or the week after. Like, there's still hope for him. There's still hope for guys outside the top 30 to be productive players. But we like to limit it to 30 here in order to, otherwise it took almost an hour and 20 minutes last night to like make these decisions. And I shudder to think like how much longer it would take if we really expanded from here. But yeah, you can make the case from it. It's just that I want to make some decisions in order to actually talk about this stuff publicly and move forward. But it was a whole lot more fun to do this exercise than it was even a few weeks ago before all the trades went down.